Hi everyone, I'm Rosemary and welcome to part 2 of my high-end decor Dollar Dupe makeover series. In this video, I'll be taking on some beautiful decor pieces from Pottery Barn, and in part 1, I did 4 pieces from Anthropologie, which I will link here and in the description if you haven't seen those yet and would like to check it out. But for now, let's jump into this video with Project 1 and a Dollar Dupe of Pottery Barn's artisan hand-painted earthenware vase, retailing at $79. To start, I'm going to take this Dollar Tree vase that I washed and prepped. Now, this vase is 7 inches tall, and if you wanted to get closer to the 15-inch size of the original, you can use the same technique on a taller vase that you may have just around your house, or pick one up at a thrift store for just a few dollars. Next, I took some Dollar Tree spackle and mixed it in a 1-to-1 ratio with some craft paint in the color terracotta. Once the spackle paint was nice and smooth, I just painted it right onto the side of the vase with a little foam brush, and you'll notice that it does go on kind of sheer. This will just be the first coat, and then once that first coat had dried, I went back with a second and then a third coat on top of that. And then here is what the finished vase looks like. After 3 coats, you can see it has lots of texture to it, even some lumps and bumps. And so what I'm going to do is take some fine grade P150 sandpaper and just sand it nice and smooth, getting into all the little nooks and crannies there around the neck, and just trying to get as smooth a finish as I can. And then I just went back with a damp paper towel to remove off all of the remaining dust. Once I had a nice smooth finish, it was time to put on my next paint color, and I'm going to be using Waverly chalk paint that I've diluted down pretty much a 1-to-1 ratio, paint to water, and then I'm using the color Cashew here for this first coat, and I'm just dabbing it on with my sponge brush and then going back with a makeup brush and kind of working it in. You just want that muted coat here. You don't want it to have any, you see when I'm doing it with the brush, it's leaving kind of severe marks. So I want to go back with the makeup brush and make sure I blend those all in. Now you are seeing I am leaving some of the terracotta spotted in between. I don't want to cover this vase with the cashew colored paint. Actually, it's just almost a glaze now because I've watered it down so much, but I don't want to completely cover it. I do want to leave spots here and there of the terracotta popping through, as well as apply the cashew heavier and lighter in different spots so that there is that shading going on as well. And then here you can see the kind of muddled finish that you get from doing that process. And now to add a little bit more dimension to the finish, I'm going to repeat the same process, this time with the Waverly chalk paint in the color hazelnut. And so I did the same thing. I diluted it pretty much a 1-to-1 water to paint ratio. And then I'm dabbing it on with my sponge brush and then going back with the makeup sponge to further blend and again kind of putting it, thinner, the hazelnut thinner in some spots and a little bit, leaving it a little bit darker in others, and just blending all of the colors together. And now you can see where we now have these different colors coming through, and it's just really adding to the effect and giving the vase a lot of dimension. We also have some naturally occurring cracks and pitting, which is great because that's actually what happens as well on a real earthenware vase. But we are going to want to help that along just a little bit. And so I took some red and some brown paint and I just mixed those two together because I didn't want like a stark brown. I wanted to have a little bit of that, reddish tone that would be naturally occurring. And so I just did that actually on the end of a zip tie and just kind of added those in to create some more pitting and some more look of some holes in the vase. And then as a finishing touch, I just want to splatter on some white paint because that is the speckling that the original does have. And so again, I just heavily diluted some white craft paint and took an old toothbrush and just flicked that paint onto the side of the vase. And then I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same thing with some brown craft paint. And now here you can see the finished project compared to the original. And looking at the two together, I think I might have gone a little overboard on the brown speckling. But other than that, I think it's looking pretty good. And the Dollar Dupe comes in at about $3. But if you did want to keep more to the size of the original, the increased cost of materials would bring the final cost in at about $6. For project 2, I'll be doing a Dollar Dupe replica of the Margaret ceramic planter on a stand, retailing at $69. And for this one, I'm going to start with this paint and brush organizer from Dollar Tree. It comes with these 4 pieces. This here is the top where the paint brushes go, but I'm not going to be using that in this DIY, but we'll probably see that in a future one. And then I'm going to just put the legs in, and then that's going to form the plant stand. Next, I'm going to take this Happy Easter plastic bucket and I'm going to remove the handle. You just pop it off. And then since I want to paint this, I'm going to first go over it with some sandpaper to create a nice surface to paint on. And the first coat of paint will be a powdery coat of the white spray paint to the bucket. And then for the stand, I'll be doing a powdery coat to the top of the plant stand and then a full coat on the rest of the stand. And then this is what I mean by a powdery coat. I'm just kind of lightly spraying the top, but you can see there on the back, I did do a full coat of the paint. And then I realized that I had the metallic spray paint, so I went ahead and switched that out. Just wanted to point that out there. And then here you can see, again, just a powdery coat on that first layer of paint on the bucket. But then I wanted to switch over to some white chalk paint. And so I did 3 coats of white chalk paint, brush on white chalk paint, for the bucket after that. And then for the top of the plant stand, I wanted a terracotta color, so I just mixed in some brown craft paint with my pumpkin colored Waverly chalk paint and used that to paint the top of my plant stand. And then here is what the bucket looks like after it was painted with 3 coats of the white chalk paint. But since the original has a gloss finish, I'm going to go ahead and give it a couple coats of white spray paint on top of that. And then by the magic of television, here is what the bucket looks like after a couple coats of the gloss on top of that. And now what I want to do is take some black chalk paint and then I just painted the bottom as well as the inside rim of the bucket with the black chalk paint. And here you can see I'm just coating the bottom and then I'm also going ever so slightly up there around the outside edge, just kind of creating a little rim there at the bottom. Next up was to do the pattern on the front. And so I had this idea that I would use ribbon to keep the lines of the pattern straight. Since I couldn't use tape, that would tear up the paint. And if I used the ribbon, I could just tape the ends. However, that really wasn't such a great idea as the ribbon kept sliding out of place and really didn't help that much. Eventually, I just switched to using a ruler and just marking spaces with a pencil and just kind of did that all the way around. And I'll show you that in a little bit. But as you can see from the original, the pattern starts with first a row of dots. And so I just used a paint marker to go all the way around the bucket at the top line, creating a row of dots. Next in the pattern is a row of X's. And so again, I moved down that ribbon and just created a row of X's underneath of the dots. And then after the X's came another row of dots. And then after that, it was another row of X's followed by another row of dots. Then there's about a 1-inch gap followed by another 3 rows of just dots. And then this is where I switched to the ruler. Now you can either measure from the bottom or the top to get your spacing. And since I had already done the top, I measured up from the bottom 1.5 inches to start my bottom line or row, and then measured 1/2 inch in between each row and marked that with a pencil. And this just kept going around the bucket sporadically, marking for with a pencil line, measuring it with a ruler, and that seemed to work much better. And now here you can see the finished project next to the original. And of course the original is ceramic and metal, and the Dollar Dupe is plastic painted to look like ceramic and metal, but I think it does give you that same look and vibe, and at a much cheaper cost. For project 3, I'll be doing a Dollar Dupe of the Jules round mirror, retailing for $199. For this project, I'm going to start with some wood clothespins from the Dollar Tree. Now, I did have to break into a second pack, so you will need 2 packs for this project. And I'm going to be staining them with some Minwax stain in the color Special Walnut. And I'm going to stain all of the clothespins, everything included in this pack of 36. Plus, I think there was an additional maybe 10 more. And then I'm going to make sure I'm getting into all the little nooks and crannies, especially where there are clips on the bottom. Where I'm painting right now, that's the spot that is going to be visible. The other parts really aren't going to be visible, but I am staining them just because if you're looking at the mirror from the side, you'll see the raw, naked clothespin in behind. So I want to make sure that I'm staining the entire clothespin. Next, I'm going to take one of these Dollar Tree mirrors. Now, the ones that they have in store now are larger than the ones that they've had in the past, and they are held on by these kind of plastic clips. And kind of have to break the clip in order to get the mirror out, but that's okay because we're not putting it back in. But this one is a little larger than the ones that they have had in the past. And what I want to do here is just clip the clothespins onto the edge of the mirror. Now, I do want to use a little E6000 glue to try to keep them in place a little bit, glue them on. And so I'm just adding a little E6000 there to the tip before clipping them onto the edge of the mirror. And then I just continued placing the clothespins around the mirror. And this is where one pack got me to. And then I had to go and stain some more and add the rest. It's probably about 12 more that I had to add there. And then once all of the clothespins were in place, I just made sure that all of the pieces were kind of in line and in place. Next, I took a 3-foot piece of balsa wood. You can get these at the craft stores. And with the coupons, it comes in about $2, $2.50. And so this is the 1/8 inch size. And so all I'm going to do with this is first I want to kind of distress it. So I'm going to use this melon baller to kind of just make dings or like kind of indentations and then also some scrapes. But you can use this or any tool. I can also just use a scissors. So if I take my scissors and I just take the handle and just kind of use that to dent, and then also to use the blade to scrape along just any way that you can to create a little distressing into the wood. Next, I took a ruler and measured 3-inch lengths, and then I just drew lines across and cut there. Now, the neat thing about balsa wood, if you have never used it before, is that it cuts like with the scissors. It's fantastic. So I just cut these little 3-inch squares of the balsa wood that I had distressed. And then next, I wanted to cut the wood into kind of flower petal type shapes. And so I needed them to be different sizes. And so I needed one set of the petals to be 5 centimeters on the top, 3 centimeters on the bottom, 4 and 2, and then 2 and 1. And so in order to do those, I took one of my squares and then I took the ruler and just measured across 5 centimeters and then just cut it there, creating 2 pieces now. And that other piece I will keep, the smaller piece I will keep for my 2 centimeter, 1 centimeter petals, but for this one where I'm trying to create the 5 centimeter, 3 centimeter petal, I'm going to go ahead and take my ruler and just place it there kind of in the center of the piece on the bottom so that I can get my 3 centimeter length kind of centered there. And so I'll mark off the one end and then the other with the pencil. So that's that 3 centimeter length there in the middle. And then again, I'm going to just use some scissors to cut from that point to the upper corner on each side. And then just round it off on the top by snipping those corners on the end. And then this will create a template that I can use to trace and then just cut the other squares in that shape. And then on that other side that has a remainder I can use for the smaller pieces. And then once all my pieces are cut, I'm going to dry fit them onto my mirror frame first before I glue them on. And so the pieces that are the largest pieces, those are the 3 centimeter pieces, and the clothespins are 1 centimeter wide. So you can typically get one of the larger pieces to go across 3 of the clothespins. The middle ones go across 2 of the clothespins, and then the small ones are a single clothespin. And you can kind of just shape them around using the different sizes. That creates that nice rustic look when you have these different sizes. But as you go, you're going to need to kind of trim here and there to get the pieces to fit together well. And then you can also cut pieces to fit in where there are gaps, or even just when there's little splinters that kind of come from your cut pieces, you can kind of just glue those in to piece everything together. And then once you have everything dry fit, you can go back with some wood glue and just glue all your pieces to the clothespin. And don't worry about putting in those little pieces, because, don't worry about lining it up so perfectly that there might be gaps or gashes, because remember, the more distressed, the more it's going to look like the original, and the more that the stain that we're going to put on top now is going to soak into those little crevices and really give you a lot of great dimension and detail. And then once all your pieces are attached, it's ready for the top stain. And so I'm going to just go back with that Minwax stain again in color Special Walnut, and just paint all of the wood on top. I'm going to make sure I get all around the edges and in between in all the little crevices, and then also down in where the wood and the clothespins touch the mirror. I want to make sure that I get in along that front there so that the stain is covering all of the pieces of the wood. And then here's what it looks like after the stain has been applied, and you can see how all those little gashes and nicks and gaps have created a lot of variation in the color, and it just gives a lot of great character and dimension to the piece. And then once the stain was dry, I went back with my very most favorite polyurethane, this Rust-Oleum triple thick, in a clear satin. The original piece does have a rather thick coat, almost like a resin coating to the top of the wood. So this thick stain is really ideal for this project. And I will be doing this one coat, and then I will add a second coat on top of that. I also wanted to mention at this time that this is a smaller mirror than the original, much smaller mirror. And if you did want to get a larger mirror from Michael's or Hobby Lobby, you can get those for like $6 or $7, and that will get you much closer to the size of this project, of the original. But you could just use the exact same technique, just on a larger frame, a larger mirror, and then this way you're going to get a result that's going to be much more similar in size to the original mirror than this one here from the Dollar Tree mirror. And here you can see the finished project next to the original. And although it is a much smaller mirror, it still does give you that same vibe. And you can see how using the same technique with a larger mirror will get you pretty close to the original. Plus, a larger mirror would also give you a better wood to mirror ratio. This one's a little bit askew, but you can pick up a 14-inch mirror from Michael's for about $6, which will result in a fairly large 21-inch finished project, and for a lot less for the price. Well, I hope you have enjoyed part 2 of my high-end Dollar Dupe series featuring Pottery Barn decor items. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give a big thumbs up and let me know in the comments which one was your favorite. Be sure to check back next week to see which high-end retailer I take on to create some more Dollar Dupes. And if you want to check out part 1 on Anthropologie Dupes, make sure to check out the link in the description. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.